I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Remembering Roe v. Wade and praying for life.
There were many people out there suffering about abortion, but none of us were talking about it because of the shame and the guilt.
Working to give life at a clinic like no other in New York City.
The Gianna Center is New York's first, and actually only, authentically Catholic women's healthcare center.
And clothes encounters of the best kind. How one school in Queens is trying to help Haiti.
We should be caring for our brothers and sisters in countries where they have, at this point in Haiti, nothing.
Well, good evening and thank you so much for joining us. A day to remember here in the U.S., the 37th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision that made abortion legal across the country. Earlier today, around 17,000 young people packed into the Verizon Center in Washington for a special rally and a mass, and that was a prelude, of course, to today's March for Life.
That's right. Things kicked off with a concert featuring a number of Catholic artists, followed by a rosary and a mass celebrated by Washington Archbishop Donald Wuerl. And we recently had the opportunity to attend another mass here closer to home. It was part of a morning of prayer for women, men, and families affected by abortion. They all gathered at the Lady Chapel of St. Patrick's Cathedral to ask for forgiveness and healing.
I had an abortion myself when I was 17 years old. I was pressured by my father. And for many years, I thought I was the only person that was suffering because of abortion, because the whole idea out there is that you have an abortion, your problem is over. So I spent years of my life feeling crazy and alone and thinking I was the only person that abortion had affected. As I got older and I came back to God and the church and I learned about His mercy, I also came to recognize that there were many people out there suffering about abortion, but none of us were talking about it because of the shame and the guilt.
This week we commemorate the landmark decision of Roe v. Wade, which allowed abortion to be legalized in our nation. So in anticipation of that, we had this day. It's important because it's a day of prayer. The role of prayer is essential to the fight against abortion and all sin in the world.
We do this every year, and what we do is we rotate it to a different part of the diocese each year so that we can show people how the prayer service runs and works. We have all the materials collected so that if people wish to host this prayer service in their parishes, they can do that.
We've kind of just really given in to the whole pro-abortion mentality of keeping quiet and being on the defensive with abortion. And I think it's just so important to bring the truth out into the light, to speak the truth, to look at what we've done and to ask forgiveness from God.
I read a testimonial about a grandmother who was so sorry that her grandchild was aborted. She didn't know at the time, 29 years ago, when she wrote this testimonial, that it would be such a horrible, horrible thing in her daughter's life and in her life. It was a very emotional experience, and it was something that made me think very, very seriously, once again, about abortion and the sin that it is in our lives.
We're grandparents. We have 4 beautiful grandchildren, and it was very easy for us to step into that role and think about our grandchildren and about our children. And we're very grateful that our grandchildren prayerfully and hopefully will be spared the evil and the difficulties of abortion in their future lives.
So it's really a message to bring to not only the post-abortive woman or the post-abortive man, but the siblings of the aborted babies and the abortionists and anybody who's been involved in abortion, to let them know that no matter what their role was in the abortion process, you know, that there's forgiveness and mercy from God and that they can get that forgiveness and mercy. And as a church, to intercede for these people before the Lord and to ask for them to be able to feel safe enough to come forward to receive that healing and that mercy.
And we'll have more on today's March for Life just ahead.
Well, we have that, and we also have the rest of the day's headlines when Currents returns.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up a little later, making clothing count for the people of Haiti.
But first, let's get a look at today's headlines. Well, as we said earlier, today is the 37th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion in all 50 states. Well, pro-life groups mark the occasion, as they do every year, with the March for Life in Washington, D.C. Thousands of people from around the country traveled to the nation's capital today to take part. Activities surrounding the march actually began last night, though, with a mass at the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, and then protesters gathered for the first time in the event's history in front of the White House. Today, protesters marched in front of the Capitol building and also the Supreme Court. Also today, on this anniversary of Roe v. Wade, the trial got underway for the man accused of killing Kansas abortion doctor George Tiller. Scott Roeder allegedly shot and killed Tiller as he was attending church services at Reformation Lutheran Church in Wichita, Kansas on May 31st of last year. Prosecutors say Roeder should be convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, but Roeder told the Associated Press in November that he was defending innocent life when he pulled the trigger.
New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan will represent U.S. bishops this weekend when he travels to Haiti for the funeral of Archbishop Joseph Serge Mio, who died in last week's massive earthquake. Reports say Dolan, who is also head of Catholic Relief Services, will be offering support to the relief effort. Meantime, many Haitian immigrants living in the U.S. are vying for a chance to legally remain in the country and get work permits. The U.S. government is now offering eligible Haitian participants 18 months to work here in order to send money to family members back home. Ed Lavandera has more.
This is the frenzy inside a Catholic church in the heart of Miami's Little Haiti neighborhood. Thousands of Haitian immigrants, many in the United States illegally, are applying for what's called Temporary Protective Status, or TPS. It allows Haitian nationals to live in the U.S. legally for the next 18 months. For years, Haitian Americans lobbied for TPS, but many advocates now see an opportunity to make bigger changes, to ease years of immigration restrictions toward Haitians coming to the United States.
This now is an opportunity for Haiti to change. This is the time right now, and many feel this is the last time. A lot of people feel like this is our time.
Horrifying images like these have been common in the ocean waters between the United States and Haiti. It's a dangerous and deadly journey for many who try to make it to American shores. Every year, U.S. Coast Guard officials say about 1,600 Haitians are stopped on the high seas and sent back home. Irvin Daphnis with the Haitian Lawyers Association in Miami says if more Haitians could work legally in the U.S., it would help their country recover from decades of poverty and corruption back home.
So that's how it helps. Haitians are going to be able to be in a position financially to help Haiti themselves.
When the Obama administration approved temporary protective status for Haitian immigrants already in the U.S. before the earthquakes, it was expected that some 30,000 people would apply. But immigration officials now say that number could top 200,000. U.S. officials have been quick to temper any hopes of vast changes in immigration laws toward Haitians who may now try to come to the United States.
We are not going to be accepting into the United States Haitians who are attempting to make it to our shores. They will be interdicted. They will be repatriated.
U.S. officials say emergency plans are in place to handle a mass exodus of Haitians fleeing the earthquake-ravaged nation. But so far, there have been no signs of Haitians jumping on boats.
It's very, very dangerous. It's very dynamic, and I can't stress enough how important it is for people in Haiti to stay home, stay safe, help rebuild your country, and we'll help you rebuild it.
But many Haitian Americans say help rebuilding should include opening more doors to their beleaguered countrymen.
And that is CNN's Ed Lavandera reporting. Muslims in the U.S. face more prejudice than any other religious group in the country. That's the finding of a new Gallup World Religion Survey. And the survey shows Americans are more than twice as likely to express prejudice against Muslims than they are against Christians, Jews, or Buddhists. While 63% of Americans say they have little to no knowledge of Islam, more than half say their view of the faith is not too favorable. But the survey also found that people who attend religious services more than once a week are much more likely to have a favorable view of Muslims. Well, some are saying it was religious ignorance that led to a flight headed from New York to Louisville, Kentucky, to be diverted to Philadelphia after concerns over a passenger's prayer. John Chrysos has more.
It's a family reunion that should have happened hours ago. 17-year-old Caleb and his 16-year-old sister Dahlia left New York around 7:30. Their 2.5-hour flight to see their grandmother in Louisville turned into an all-day adventure. U.S. Airways Flight 3079 diverted to Philadelphia after a security scare. Authorities say Caleb got out a religious object known as a tefillin, a set of little black boxes used by Jewish men during morning prayer time.
Well, they were, the young kids, they were pretty shook up, but they've had a morning flight. My grandson didn't have a chance to pray. They're religious kids. They say their morning prayers, and they use this tefillin.
The crew questioned the young man about the object and the ritual, but decided to land the plane in Philly anyway.
So yeah, people don't really know about them so much, so I guess I understand a little bit.
The TSA and local police met the plane on the runway. A passenger on board snapped these pictures of what he describes as a scary scene. Officers coming on board with guns.
But the scariest part was the police coming on board with the 9mm, telling everybody to hold their hands up. And I never had a gun pointed at me like that.
Satterley says everyone stayed calm, including the teens, who police say cooperated every step of the way.
He didn't overreact. They took him off the airplane. It looked like from the window that they put him in handcuffs, and then they put him in an SUV. He was in an SUV for about 10 minutes.
And that is John Chrysos reporting.
Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. Just ahead, giving women a pro-life alternative for health care.
Medical ethics ultimately boils down to facilitating your patient's choices.
Well, welcome back. As tens of thousands of people take part in today's March for Life down in Washington, there is a remarkable effort underway right here in New York to respect life before it even begins. In December, St. Vincent's Hospital in Manhattan opened a unique healthcare center for women devoted to using natural methods to help with fertility and pregnancy planning. It's the very first of its kind in the New York area.
It's called the Gianna Center for Women, and it takes its name from St. Gianna Beretta Molla. St. Gianna was an Italian doctor, wife, and mother who, in 1962, refused to undergo an abortion during a difficult pregnancy, even though having the baby would put her own life at risk. She delivered the child to term, but Gianna died just a week later. She was canonized back in 2004. Now the Gianna Center seeks to continue her legacy. And last week, our Natalia Ortiz sat down to speak with the center's director, Dr. Ann Mielnik.
Dr. Mielnik, thank you so much for joining us. Tell me what the Gianna Center is.
The Gianna Center is New York's first, and actually only, authentically Catholic women's healthcare center. So we do full spectrum family medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, prenatal care, and a new approach to infertility called naprotechnology.
How is this clinic different than other hospitals or clinics?
At this point in New York City, we offer two services that are not available elsewhere. One is the Creighton Model Fertility Care System, which is a new approach to natural family planning that's highly effective and scientifically supported. And naprotechnology, which is a new approach to women's health that works cooperatively with the woman's reproductive cycle.
What has the response been from Catholic women who find you, or just women in general?
Oh, it's been amazing. It's been amazing. I started working on this 2 years ago. And since I started working, women have called me from all over the country, Catholic women and pro-life women who are not necessarily Catholic, saying that they've actually stopped going to the doctor because they are tired of being mocked or criticized by their doctors for their choices, whether it's using natural family planning, having a large family, not wanting to do IVF in the case of infertility, or waiting until they're married to, or choosing chastity until marriage. Since we've opened on an almost daily basis, the women who come in, often with tears in their eyes, tell me that they have not gone to the doctor for an average of 6 years because of this. And I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it every day.
So now that you're here and you see that there has been a positive response, do you have any plans for growth?
We actually started this center as the first and actually model for a national network of women's healthcare centers that we hope will become the comprehensive alternative to Planned Parenthood. We are building that network through a nonprofit I started called the John Paul II Center for Women, and are working with physicians around the country trying to start these centers.
Tell me how the Gianna Center supports the pro-life movement and the dignity of life.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. We started working on this, as I said, about 2 years ago, and in the interim, this healthcare debate has really mobilized the pro-life movement, and I think people are realizing in a way that they have not previously what a critical role having pro-life healthcare available plays. All of these discussions about the healthcare reform, the Freedom of Choice Act, conscience protection for physicians has really mobilized the pro-life movement. And at this point, I think physicians across the country are recognizing that we need to be the ones to stand up for these issues, stand up and provide pro-life health care, regardless of the cost to ourselves, and be a witness in the culture. And my hope is that as pro-life physicians respond to that call, they will start to take on a leadership role within the pro-life movement.
What was it like for you going to medical school and wanting to uphold your Catholic principles?
It's very interesting. The first thing is in medical ethics, there really is a very deliberate attempt in medical education to teach students that their professional responsibility is to check their conscience at the door, that medical ethics ultimately boils down to facilitating your patient's choices, whether you believe that they're right or not, particularly in the area of reproductive health care. And on topics like natural family planning, I found actually nothing but old information. People completely write it off as the rhythm method and are not even aware of the research that supports modern methods of NFP.
Where can people find you?
The Gianna Center is located in Midtown. We are on 40th Street, just 3 blocks from Grand Central Station.
And that is Dr. Ann Mielnik of the Gianna Center. And Natalia has actually written more about the center on our blog, and there's information there about the services that they provide. Just head to currentsny.net and click on Riding the Wave. And all I can say is what courage a mother must have to be willing to sacrifice their own life for that of their unborn child. What a remarkable thing to do.
Definitely a wonderful story of courage, as you said, and it's just an amazing thing to hear about. And of course, it all coinciding with the big March for Life in Washington, D.C. today, the 37th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, as we've said. And the turnout there, I think, just, you know, of course, very large, meeting expectations of people there. And the events, I think one of the coolest things that I found out about, as we've, of course, this is our first March for Life on the air here at Currents.
Sure, here at Currents, yeah.
But one of the neatest things that I found about this particular event this year was the virtual March for Life that we talked about the other day, that if folks weren't able to go to the march themselves, they create their own avatar and send them.
And they can still, sort of chime in. It's amazing what you can do online or through the use of technology these days. And apparently, you know, whatever, you know, cause that you want to be a part of, there's probably something out there for you on it, including the March for Life today, which is really great for the people that couldn't trek, I guess in this case, it's down to D.C. or up to D.C. I don't even know, down to D.C.
From here, down
I'm
to
sorry, I'm from Boston. I get confused where I am sometimes.
Well, I'm from Atlanta, so what do you want? Oh my goodness, don't go away. There's more Currents coming up straight ahead. Coming up, helping Haiti by making fundraising fashionable.
Even though you would think they're the littlest, they're not going to give that much money. The pre-K always beats all of us.
Finally tonight, you're about to meet some youngsters in Queens who are looking for a way to raise money for Haiti and ended up turning fundraising into a bit of a fashion statement.
That's right. The kids decided to help out by dressing down, as Natalia Ortiz reports.
Last week's earthquake in Haiti has inspired people of all backgrounds and of all age groups to send help. And the students you see here at St. Sebastian School in Woodside are doing just that. These children got to leave their uniforms at home for the day if they were willing to pay at least $1. Well, you can see how that turned out.
We have to wear a uniform every single day, so it's nice once in a while to just change it up and get to wear regular clothes.
For the kids at this school, wearing the latest threads isn't only for fun, but also for fundraising. This group of students is leading the drive. The Elizabeth Ann Seton Society is a select group of 8th graders who provide community service, except this time, they're not helping their community, but one most of them have no connection to. Principal Joanne Dolan thinks that's a valuable lesson.
I think we're doing our jobs when we expose the children to more global issues because it affects them in every way. It affects us because we're a Catholic school, because it's something that we should do. We should be caring for our brothers and sisters in countries where they have, at this point in Haiti, nothing.
It was some of the smallest who contributed the most.
Even though you would think they're the littlest, they're not going to give that much money. The pre-K always beats all of us with their donation.
The money collected will be matched by St. Sebastian's Parish and given to Catholic Relief Services to help Haiti's recovery efforts.
I'm hoping that the school raises between $500 and $700. That would be wonderful.
But by the time all the money had been collected, the total raised amounted to $1,470, almost tripling the principal's expectations.
There are people out there that have nothing, and we need to help them. And that's why it's so important, especially in today's society with children that come from this great country where we have so much, to extend the helping hand to other countries. I think that we would be remiss in our jobs if we didn't expose them to that on every age-appropriate level.
Well, what a great idea for a great cause there. And to find out how you can help those in Haiti, just go to currentsny.net and click on Riding the Wave. We have links to several organizations that are providing assistance to the people there. And the kids are really ingenious.
I know, that's such a cool idea. I was going to say, I wish they did that when I was a kid, but I didn't have school uniforms when I was in school. So. Yeah. You know, it's I can't really put myself in their shoes, but that is a really cool idea, though. I like it. And of course, as you mentioned, we do have a lot of organizations listed over on our blog at currentsny.net, and you know, reputable organizations that you can give to. Catholic Relief Services among them, and they're still striving to kind of reach that $21 million goal to help out the people of Haiti. So give what you can, and I know, as we've talked about, it's difficult during this time, but people are being very generous.
They are, and thankfully they are, because things really aren't getting any better. I've been, you know, personally affected by this too, and it's just, you know, sort of put me in a bit of a state of, you know, sort of half depression, as I'm sure it does a lot of people in some respects, because it is so sad. But today I saw the picture of this little boy, Kiki. He's about 7, I think, and he was rescued from the rubble, and he had this beaming smile. He lifted up his hands, and he was thrilled to be rescued. He and his sister were rescued. Yeah. And really, it was one of those things that I just could feel in my heart, like there is hope, and there will be rebuilding, and there will be some life for the survivors. And it was really the first time that I could sort of look at that story and see all of that devastation and say, he represents all of what we want to be.
Right, and that I'm sure is just an amazing image to see. And you know, picking up the pieces and moving on has got to be what it's about now. And of course, there is a lot of work left to do, and a lot of grieving still to be done as well. But there is hope as we move forward.
Right.
Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Now, on Monday, we'll have more on the March for Life in Washington. Complete coverage. You'll actually hear from some people who were there. And tomorrow morning, Saturday, we'll have full coverage of the Verizon Center Youth Rally that took place just before the march. All that starts tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock right here on the net.
And meantime, remember, you don't even need a TV to watch Currents. You can always catch us online at currentsny.net. We have all kinds of videos and interviews that we've done in previous shows and all of that. So we look forward to seeing you online. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Have a great night and also a great weekend.